Here I'm going to give you an overview of the Argumentative Synthesis assignment sheet. So I'm in the paper reference folder where I can find all of the assignment sheets and rubrics for the class. So if we click on Argumentative Synthesis assignment sheet, we'll see the information about the entire essay. So we're actually going to take each part. They're called Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and we're in some ways going to treat them like separate essays. You'll go through the writing process with an outline, draft, peer review, and a final draft for Part 1 before you go on to starting Part 2, and likewise finish Part 2 before we work on Part 3. And we won't be joining these all together in one whole essay. So when it says final draft of Part 1 due, you'll know that that should be proofread, polished, MLA format, ready to go for your final grade for Part 1. So that's important to keep in mind with this essay and how it's divided up. With the argumentative synthesis essay, you'll be choosing a topic, and then within that topic you want to choose a debated issue. So you won't just be writing information about this topic. Even though for Part 1 and Part 2 you'll be maintaining a neutral and objective tone where you're not sharing an opinion, you'll actually be writing about an issue that has many opinions on it. So it's important to look for an aspect of your topic or issue that's debated, that people have different opinions on, and look for those different viewpoints that are represented. With this essay, you want to consider who your audience is. So try and imagine an audience a bit beyond BYU Idaho that's academic but not an expert in your topic. So you'll need to cover things like key terms and background and history as related to the specific issue that you're writing about, but you can assume that your audience maybe has heard of the topic likely. As part of that writing to that audience, you'll need to create an academic tone for each part of the essay, parts 1, 2, and 3. And so you'll probably, for the most part, avoid references to I, or I think, or I believe, or in my opinion, because that doesn't really relate to creating an academic tone. Now, if you're using a specific example from your life as part of catching the reader's attention, for example, like you'll need to do in Part 1, then it would be perhaps appropriate to say I. You wouldn't use an awkward phrase like the author of this paper has had an experience, because that sounds a little bit too formal and stuffy, so you would use I in that case, but you want to avoid filler phrases or really opinionated, persuasive kinds of phrases like I think or I believe. With this essay, parts 1 and 2, as I mentioned, will be neutral. Anyone shouldn't know what your opinion is on the topic when they've finished reading Part 1 and Part 2. And then Part 3 is a little bit different than the first two in that you'll be joining the debate and choosing one of those viewpoints that you've already written about in Part 2 and creating an argument. So again, it's important to keep in mind, Part 1 and Part 2, you're not giving your opinion on the topic. Instead, you'll be drawing on many sources that you find that should be credible, and even some academic or scholarly sources using the library databases, drawing on many different sources to find these opinions and consolidating them, or we would say synthesizing that information for a reader. So instead of the reader going to find all these, you're going to find all these opinions in these various sources and put it together into this argumentative synthesis essay.